We are officially ready to go now. Ready to go on a medium-sized Wednesday. 9 games on the card tonight. Only 4 to recap from yesterday. And I don't have a show opening rant today. I feel content. Paul George played in a basketball game. He didn't look that great, but, whatever. Rusty. Skipping the back-to-back. I think Clippers are in Utah on the second half of a back-to-back after coming from home. They're going to get smoked. Nobody's going to play in that game. Get Utah by 6.5 right now. I only wish that we had that line before Paul George was ruled out, but I think that odds makers kind of knew. Those are brutally difficult games coming from the West Coast. We talked about it just a few days ago. I think the Suns, right? And the Suns have a win in Golden State, and then they flew into altitude and just got steamed by the Nuggets. It's the same story in Utah. The altitude back-to-back coming from Pacific time. That's the little tweak on it because that's an 1.5 to 2 hour flight. So it's a typically longer flight. And they're starting later. Games finish up late Pacific time. Clippers game ended at shade before 10 o'clock local time out here last night. By the time they get packed up and get on a plane, it's probably after midnight, if I had to guess. Then it's some 2 hours-ish. So it's 2 a.m. Pacific time when they're landing in Utah, where it's actually closer to probably 3, somewhere between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. They're probably not getting to the hotel until almost 5 in the morning. And then they got to turn around and they got to play a 6 o'clock local time game. So Pacific time, 6 o'clock Pacific time, I should say. It'll be 7 o'clock local time in Utah. So they have 14 hours between when they go to sleep and their next ball game after having just played one. It's crushing. It crushes the body. It's very different than if they're coming from the other side, even Central Time. Take a flip side because it's like a double. You get that double whammy. Let's say that the Clippers were in Cleveland the night before or something like that. Although I admit I have no idea how long the flight is. We'll Google it here. How long is the flight from Cleveland to Salt Lake City? Yeah, this is great podcast. I'm not seeing anything direct, so this is not at all helpful. They're saying 5 hours, but that's because there's a layover there. There's a connecting flight. Great, that's not super useful. Well, anyway, figure it out. I mean, we can look at a Google map, and the distance from Cleveland to Salt Lake City is actually not that different than the distance from the West Coast to Salt Lake City. It's probably more like a 3-ish, I would think, hour flight. And then obviously Denver, you move it a little bit closer to the midpoint there. So you got this time thing where, let's say that a game finishes up in what's easier. I probably should have done Chicago because I'm pretty sure there's a Chicago to Salt Lake City flight, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. Chicago to Salt Lake City, you take the flight there. It's, 2 hours and some odd minutes, probably 2.5 hours, something like that. And you're leaving Chicago at midnight Central Time. But instead of that being what we just talked about, midnight Pacific time, which is 1 a.m. in Salt Lake City or Denver, now it's 11 p.m. So it's a 2-hour difference there. You get in, you get started, you get to sleep at 3 instead of 5 in the morning, or you check into your hotel at 3 instead of 5 in the morning. It's a big, big difference. It's still really hard, and you're in altitude, but that 2-hour, that time gap where the game starts later, ends later. Anyway, it's a gambling thing more than anything else. I don't know why I got sidetracked on this one, other than to mention the fact that the Clippers actually had their superstars for one shining night, and now they won't for another one here. They lost anyway, so I guess, what the hell good did it do? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, everybody. I am Dan Besbris. Please do follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, DanBesBris. Want to remind everybody again that if you're listening to the recorded version of this podcast, we are trying to do shows Tuesday through Friday live on YouTube. We are doing it today. And the advantage to watching live on YouTube is, number one, you get to see my lovely mug, which may actually be a disadvantage and why many of you might continue to choose to listen to the recorded podcast only. But we also have little graphics that we can run up there. They're not particularly fancy, but you can see the box scores as we're talking about them. You can see the player ranks as we're talking about them. You can see the questions that you can pose, right? I can do this. I can get the right word. You get to write questions in the YouTube live chat, and I answer them after the show. You don't hear that part on the recorded podcast, but after the show is done, I usually look over at the YouTube live chat, and if anybody throws any questions in there, we kind of rapid fire our way through them. So again, follow me on Twitter at Dan Vespris. Use the YouTube live chat. Come hang with us. Sportsethos.com/YouTube is our hub over there. So head on over and subscribe and do all that good stuff. Let's look at the box scores from Tuesday. I don't think this is going to take us all that long because it was really just like big name guys showing out for the most part. We had like maybe, I would argue, one or two things in maybe half the ball games. So really not a whole lot. But let's dive in and see what we can make of ourselves here. Toronto lost in Milwaukee. They were on a back-to-back after the overtime game with the Knicks on MLK Day. And so they had a little bit more time to get themselves prepped because the previous one was a day game. But most of the team was coming off playing like 44 minutes the night before. And they still got up to Nick Nurse, man, you got to give your team a break here. I know Freddie VanVleet had a really good ball game. He runs so hot and so cold. And every time he runs cold, I get the questions. The Twitter questions, they come in. What should we do about Fred VanVleet? And I'm like, guys, for the love of all that is holy, he runs super hot and super cold. And guess what? He's number 25 on a per game basis. It feels like he's been really banged up this year, but he's actually played in 37 ball games so far, which is, he's missed like what, 6-ish of the Raptors games, 6, 7. Not a brutal number. He's at like around 80%, which is frankly pretty close to league average right now. He's 25 per game. He's 26 by totals. So he's a tiny bit behind his ADP, but it's kind of been fine. The only way that this thing explodes in our faces, or anybody's face, not that we were targeting Freddie VanVleet, but like we ended up with him in some spots, is a trade to a place where he's not like the number 2 guy. He's basically the number 2 guy on that Raptors team. Pascal Siakam tends to take more shots, typically on a night-to-night basis, not necessarily when VanVleet is the hot one. He got 28 shots and Siakam only had 13. Siakam probably should have had more, for whatever that's worth. But that's the way that this thing could kind of annihilate itself. So he gets cold. He falls a few slots. He gets hot. He moves back up the board. Don't worry too much about it. Gary Trent has been on a furious run of late here. I haven't looked lately to see how far he's moved up the board, but he's actually, now we're checking. He's number 49 per game on the season after this recent hot run. Got his field goal percent up to 44. Got his steals up to 1.7. Like all that crap at the beginning of the year just didn't even happen. He's rolling. Great. Terrific. Nothing you need to do. And people are like, well, should I sell high? I'm like, yeah, well, okay, so you sell high only if the player you're getting back is built on the Gary Trent like first round run that he's been on the last, whatever it is, like 3 weeks. He's been number 11 in 9-cat leagues. He's not going to be number 11 the rest of the year, and no one's going to give you number 11. If you offer up Gary Trent and you get a top 50 guy back, that's basically selling where he should be because he was very cold. Now he's very hot. He's kind of leveled where we expected him to be all season long anyway. I actually didn't plan on talking about Toronto in this game, but we have time today, so I did. I planned on talking about Milwaukee. Brook Lopez got ejected, which is a little bit silly, let's be honest, because Brook Lopez is typically one of the friendlier dudes in the NBA. He's fallen to number 27 now, and I think we kind of knew he wasn't going to stay in the second round all season long, but it does feel like he can pretty much roll top 40 when all things are kind of said and done in this mess of a year. So don't freak out. And he's played in 44 games too, which I think is every Bucks game so far. Or did he miss one? Either way, he's number 11 by totals. So Eat your heart out, Nikola Vucevic, who's number 10. God, I love these old man squad guys that just never get drafted on time. It's crazy. Joe Ingles, 15, 6, and 8 with a block on a hyper-efficient ball game. Now, this is not something that's going to happen when Giannis is back, and it's definitely not going to be something when Giannis and Chris Middleton are each back in there. But we were kind of trying to get a feel for, can we pick up any bucks while Giannis and Middleton are on the shelf? Now, Middleton, remember, he got assigned to the G League again yesterday to get some practices in with them. He's really getting close. We don't have a specific deal with Giannis, but he's been day to day. So they could each pop up for Milwaukee's next ball game, and all of this could kind of be moot. But just in case it's not, Grayson Allen does feel like a pretty safe play when those two stars are out. Frankly, when any two of the Bucks stars are resting or out or hurt, whether it's Holiday, Middleton, Giannis, any two of the three combination, Grayson Allen does make a lot of sense. Bobby Portis makes a lot of sense in those spots. He wasn't as good in this one, but typically he's pretty safe. Connaughton is more your kind of 14-teamer, more of a schedule streaming kind of play when everybody's hurt. And then Ingles does seem like maybe he's kind of moved above the cut line when two of the stars are hurt. So I think I would start Grayson Allen, Joe Ingles, at least among the guys that weren't startable before when Giannis was in. Now, again, this might not matter. Bucks play again, tomorrow? Do they go Thursday or are they off until Friday? Hold on a minute. We can figure this thing out. Live on air. The Bucks are off actually for a little while now. Whoops. Do they not go until Saturday? I think they might be off until Saturday. Yeah, you probably get someone back for that ball game, whether it's Giannis or Middleton. Sure feels like somebody's going to go. But let's go back to this thing because we're getting a little too deep into the Milwaukee Bucks. Whatever. We do what we want, man. Wednesday shows, we do whatever the hell we want. Used to have buy low, sell high stuff. I got to get that going here on Wednesdays again. Every year. So look, here's the thing, guys. A little sojourn into the life of Dan Vespers. I have a 2-year-old. You guys know that. I have a 6-year-old. Most of you probably know that as well. The 6-year-old is in school from 8 a.m. until at least 2. They actually get out 1:45 a couple days of the week now, which was not something that happened when I was a kid. But it's 2:45 3 days of the week, and it's 1:45 the other 2 days. Regardless, he's in school. He's out of here for 6 hours, sometimes more because we'll throw him in aftercare. The little dude is only in school for 3 and change hours every day. So that does throw a wrench into plans, at least for me. Yes, some of the time we have a sitter that can go get him, but he gets colds, things like that. He's not old enough to be entertained by anything other than a grown-up, basically, or other children in a play yard. So I'm hesitant to make a bunch of guest-related plans on this podcast because I have to cancel them so often. I've done it to everybody. I've done it to Brew a handful of times when we were supposed to be doing shows on Thursday, and Thursday was one of my tough ones to begin with. We did it earlier this year with Josh Lloyd, where I had to push him back 2 different times for, I think the one kid had hand, foot, and mouth one time, and then the other one, I don't remember what, that's the problem. Until the little one is old enough to just even be in school for 5 hours, and I know he's just there, I don't have to worry about turning around and picking him up, and I have a window, then we're going to get some more guests back on this show. But right now, it's hard. That said, I think I am going to be doing live shows with Brewski on Fridays starting as soon as next week. And we got to make that happen. We're going to make it happen. Damn it. I'm going to make it happen. Anyway, Brooklyn at San Antonio. Kyrie Irving rested for the Nets. I think they figured they could beat the tanking Spurs even without Kyrie. But they didn't. And we're seeing the value of Kevin Durant. I mean, more than not that we needed another example of how good KD is, but the Nets have lost all 3 games since KD went down. They've fallen now into the 4 slot in the Eastern Conference. I only hope that it doesn't make KD kind of want to rush back a little bit because we need him to be right when he gets back. I wouldn't read too much into this ball game, though. I doubt that Kyrie takes too many more days off while KD is injured. I think he knows that the team needs him, and they're going to have to kind of scrape wins together while they're waiting on Kevin Durant. But On the off chance that Kyrie does take another ball game off, I figured Seth Curry was playable. I sent a tweet out yesterday that was like, hey, put him in the maybe pile with Kyrie out. And he got plenty of shots because he became sort of like a 1-to-1 fill-in almost. Joe Harris was bad, so his minutes tanked. Royce O'Neal was bad. He'd actually been quite good lately. I would stick with Royce. If Kyrie plays in the next ball game, I think O'Neal's probably the only of those fill-in level guys that does stay above the cut line. But the other one that everybody was keeping an eye on was TJ Warren. And we've had sort of a TJ Warren watch on this podcast for a month and a half now. And he probably gets enough shots when both superstars are out also. Does he do enough other stuff? It's been kind of questionable this year. It doesn't really feel like he fully has his body underneath him. And he's kind of, every week, he's sort of trying to play himself into more game shape. And I don't know. It doesn't really feel like he's all the way. The rebounds aren't really there. The steals are not really there yet. He never really passed much. I do feel more like TJ Warren is an interesting keeper for next year because he's on, I think, a veteran's minimum contract right now. And he's probably going to be trying to get a more prolific job next season. But it's hard to say. And as far as this year goes, like as long as any of the superstars are there for the Nets, it doesn't feel like he's going to be able to get enough in his bucket on a game-to-game basis. But good on Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton for surviving a 98-point effort. And again, they just, they needed help. They didn't get it. Keldon Johnson, 36-11. 3 threes, 4 steals, and he has quietly been a little bit better lately. It's still a very rough season as a whole. He's at 0.7 steals and 0.2 blocks, which is just, if you're under 1 combined defensive stats, it's really not good. The scoring's fine, 21.5 points. The rebounds at 5 are acceptable. The free throws coming back up, he's at 78% on the year now, has actually been a really good, it's a big reason why he's been improving, why his rank has been kind of sliding up the board because he wasn't hitting anything at all. And guess what? Over the last month, he's inside the top 100. Thank goodness. Still not shooting well, 44% over that stretch, but he's not at like 32% super high volume for a while. That was untenable. He's been startable over the last month. Phew. I want to talk about Jakob Poeltl for a little bit, but I think I kind of want to come back and make him maybe the last thing that we talk about on the show is Poeltl. Because there's all this trade deadline stuff that we kind of need to just punch into our brains and figure out how we're going to. Yeah, so let's just keep going. We'll come back to Jakob Poeltl. Don't let me forget. I'm talking to you folks in the live chat room. Denver. Wow. Nikola Jokic, 36, 12, and 10. A 3, a steal, and a block on 13 out of 14 shooting and 9 for 10 at the free throw line. That's insane. That is flat out insane. Jokic is currently the number 2 player on a per game basis in fantasy, and he is number 1 by totals on the year. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, number 2, Jason Tatum, number 3. KD is still number 4, by the way, by totals. That's going to fall off. But he was being chased down by Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton, and then Halliburton got hurt as well. Tatum passed him. But Jokic, man, he's just blowing out in front of everybody again. Anthony Davis still number 1 on a per game basis, but we all know what's been going on there. But holy smokes, Jokic now is shooting almost 63% on the year. That's so nuts. This is why you're the consensus number 1, because you're just dominating people. There's really nothing from a fantasy standpoint in this ball game. I think the only little footnote is, no, you're not punting on Josh Hart. I know he's not been as good lately. He's lost some of his confidence. It'll be fine. Denver is a good basketball team also. We have to remember that. They're the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. They won 7 games in a row. They're a half game up on the Grizzlies, who have won 10 games in a row. And those 2 teams have really separated themselves as the class of the West. Could the Pelicans have been up there with them had Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson stayed healthy? Maybe, but they didn't, so they're not. Nuggets and Grizzlies have had the benefit of decent health. I know the Nuggets lost Michael Porter Jr. for a few weeks in there, but that wasn't much. And the Grizzlies they lost Desmond Bane for a few weeks earlier in the year. But it does seem like a lot of teams can kind of weather the storm of one guy being out. It's when you get that compounding stuff that you really start to wear it. Like the Clippers, I know it was mostly Kawhi, but then Paul George has been out for stretches as well. And Norman Powell was out for stretches. That's a team that's underperformed. You could pin a lot of it, some of it, certainly a lot of it on injury stuff. Blazers lost Dame for a while, but they've been bad since he came back. Suns injury stuff, Lakers injury stuff, Wolves injury stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you guys out. Kings have been relatively healthy so far. Domantas Sabonis smashed up a hand, but he's playing through it. Mavs have had Luka. That's really the only one that matters there. Warriors lost Steph. Sorry, Dubs fans. I almost forgot. Warriors lost Steph for like 3 weeks. But again, they haven't been that great even when Steph was in there. Can't win on the road these days. Weird. Clippers, speaking of the team that's been knocked by injuries, Clippers lost 120-110, which, by the way, again, I don't want this to turn into like a Lakers hour on the podcast because that's not the point of a fantasy show. But I do feel like the Lakers take maybe more heat than they should. Lakers very well could have beaten the 76ers, who came back and kind of just whacked the Clippers around. I know Paul George was coming back and he was rusty and he had 5 turnovers and all that stuff. But look, James Harden had a bad game on the other side, and Philly still punked him. Clippers were losing pretty much. They had a comeback in the third quarter to basically get even, and then they fell back behind by a dozen, and it really didn't get any closer than that. The Lakers have been playing okay. Maybe the point of this is that there's criticism to go around, and you're starting to see it coming out of the Clippers media too, which there's always this kind of like, by the way, I think Clippers media does a pretty damn good job. Shout out to you guys in Clippers media of being pretty fair with their assessment of the team, which is like, look, we've been dealing with injuries, but at a certain point, you got to just figure this thing out, because they had in seasons past. I think you're seeing with the Clippers, I think they'll win a bunch of games when PG and Kawhi are both in there and both healthy and can play normal starters minutes, because Kawhi did, but Paul George didn't. Will that ever happen is a big question left unanswered. But I do think that there's like a little bit of an attrition thing going on with the Clips, where every year it's the same crap. Oh, PG's out for a whole season. Kawhi's out for half a season. PG's out for half a season. At a certain point, all these very capable backups are like, look, like this is not, we're not going to win a championship unless our guys are here. So we're running out of gas, man. Okay, from a fantasy standpoint, however, Paul George being back does, I believe, dramatically change what you can do with your Clippers. Now, everybody's going to be sitting out there back-to-back in altitude. We already know Paul George is out. Kawhi hasn't been officially ruled out, but it would be a little bit dumb to play him in this type of... Like, there's so many back-to-backs where I think guys could play, like a home back-to-back. You finish the game, you drive home. I mean, they're home by like 11 o'clock probably on those nights. And... do they go to bed immediately? I don't care, but they have all day to rest. They can get themselves geared up for the next game. Yeah, it's a lot of strain on an NBA player's body. I get it, but it's not like the travel back-to-back that we just described going into altitude. This is like this is the moment. This is the type of situation where a player gets hurt due to fatigue of body. Like, think about it. I don't know how many of you listening to this podcast are exercisers. Do you go to the gym? Do you work out at home? Do you run? Stuff like that. Think about how your muscles react differently when you're tired. And I try to get a little bit of exercise here at home. I do it all like on the floor of my bedroom with some handheld dumbbells and a yoga mat. When the kids have us awake through the middle of the night, I feel completely obliterated. And the muscles don't work as well. And I can feel like the strain on them. And I feel like things are getting ready to get pulled. And this is me working with little freaking child-sized weights on the floor of my bedroom. This is a game where so expect these guys to sit. I mean, the Clippers may just sit everybody and play all backups and just take the schedule L here and like kind of hope to pick up the pieces because they're still the 7 seed. They're tied with the Warriors at a 500 mark. If they lose a ball game, it's not the end of the world. They still have plenty of opportunity to climb out of the play-in, especially when you see, the Warriors tied with them are technically out of the play-in right now. And then the Mavericks are a game and a half up, but I happen to believe the Mavs are a little bit of a paper tiger to a certain degree. Unless they get some help at the trade deadline, then I'll reassess. And I like the Kings. You guys know that's my biggest season win total over bet, but they're not a great basketball team. And then when you look below the Clippers, you got the Jazz, the Wolves, the Thunder, the Blazers, the Suns, the Lakers. All of these teams are sort of scraping with you, where one game, it does make a difference, but also at the same time, it kind of doesn't. So skipping this one game, because for this night, for this coming evening, Norman Powell is going to be a very easy selection to play. Terrence Mann will be playable. You'll probably get enough out of Ivica Zubac tonight, who's probably playable even when the team is healthy. You might get enough out of Marcus Morris. But again, that's more of a head-to-head type of thing. And for the Clips, when you were looking at their head-to-head, you had to sort of build in this idea of, okay, like Terrence Mann was fine in this ball game with the main guys in there. He was okay, but he gets a big bump on the other half of the back-to-back. So this is a game I would play Terrence Mann in all formats. On the head-to-head side, you play him in both games of the back-to-back because you can just sort of roll up stats a little bit. When everybody's in, I think the only guys I'm playing on the Clippers in Roto are PG and Kawhi, obviously, and Zubac. I don't think I'm playing Mann in Roto when the team is fully healthy. He's probably a hold on the head-to-head side because he's going to be Quentin Grimes-like, I believe, and he's going to do just sort of enough, barely most games. Grimes has kind of played his way into a little bit more activity. Maybe that happens with Terrence Mann as the trust builds, but it also, we know the Clippers will do a lot of mixing and matching, so the bottom can kind of fall out a little bit. On the Phillies side, I got to talk about DeAnthony Melton because I am nervous now, and I said it 2 days ago on the podcast after the Lakers. Maybe that was yesterday. Was that yesterday we talked about that? It doesn't matter. No, it was 2 days ago. It was Monday. I really do not like what the Sixers' new lineup means for Melton. When on this podcast, and like this can be considered a little bit of a mea culpa, but also the Sixers are doing something different than I expected. So that's where things get sort of pivoted a little bit. I expected that when Tyrese Maxey came back, he was going to be the starting shooting guard on this team, and Melton was going to kind of get to run the second unit, which is what we saw at the very beginning of the year. It took him about 2-3 games to kind of figure out that's what his job was. And then he started to look really good, and then everybody got hurt, and obviously he exploded after that. They haven't, however, gone back to that same method, and instead, Phillies turned Tyrese Maxey into this second unit monster where he just comes in and starts attacking. It's attack. He had a usage of almost 26 yesterday, which was second on the team, believe it or not, behind just Joel Embiid. Yes, ahead of James Harden, who, for whatever reason, was just sort of like not really engaged in the game, probably having Paul George and Kawhi guarding you on defense, did a little bit of that. Yes, that was also part of it with Melton. He was looking at good defenders all game long, and that's not always going to be the case. But if he's with two of the highest usage guys in the NBA in the first unit, and Tobias Harris, who's very much third in the pecking order there, fourth in the pecking order for Melton, isn't enough. So I am more than willing to adjust my expectations here based on the fact that Philly went to a different unit than I expected. Melton now is a role player only. Will he be stuck at 21 minutes every game? Probably not. I mean, George Niang was shooting the ball well, so he got a few extra minutes in this ball game. If PJ Tucker's doing okay stuff, he'll play a little extra. And then there was a little bit of garbage time at the end as well. Shake Milton got 16 minutes. Those might go to Melton if he's playing better. He wasn't really. I'm going to hold on for probably about one more week. Today's the 18th. I'll probably hold on until like the 25th or so. And if his role doesn't change, if he continues to just be mostly a defensive placeholder in a starting unit that has Tobias, Embiid, and Harden that are on a given night probably going to combine to take about 45 shots. In this one, it was only 40. The pace was actually relatively slow in this game outside of, Embiid taking 18 free throws. There's just not enough there for Melton in this unit. If they somehow flip it back, if they decide to bring Maxey back into the starting unit and Melton's running the second, then I move him back up the board a little bit. But it's possible that he ends up a drop. I'm giving it one more week. I want to remind everybody watching live right now that, again, you can put questions in the Twitter live chat. And a few of them have floated in here over the last 10 minutes or so. But I don't know, it's a quieter day. It's a quieter day in fantasy NBA right now. I don't fully understand it, but again, I know it's happening. Please, those of you watching, throw a like on the video. Is it because I went at a different time? Was this too early? Was it too late? I don't know. Yesterday was a much, much busier one on a 4-game Tuesday. Now we got this big Wednesday, and doesn't seem like anybody's paying attention to fantasy basketball. But regardless, please do throw a like on the video. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. Probably should have done this earlier in the show. And again, we're going to try to do this, me personally, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as often as possible. Tomorrow is a question mark. It might not happen. Thursdays are the one that might not happen from time to time. And then we'll try to get these live shows going with Brewski on Friday. Brew, I think, is going to have his own live show on Wednesdays. That'll probably be more of an afternoon affair. Pacific time, I should say. Most of our shows are afternoon on Eastern time. We have our waiver wire show on Sundays. We have a weekly lineup look-ahead show on Mondays. And the hope then is that if I'm doing 4, Brew's doing 1, and we have 2 other ones, that we will have at least 7 live shows here just for basketball every week. And then we'll get some live football shows in. We had a few of those this last year. We'll get some live baseball shows. Joe Orico, I know, is gearing up to do some of that cool stuff as well. YouTube page is really going to be bumping. And make sure you guys are subscribing. sportsethos.com/YouTube, or just hit the button here on the page. But again, please click like and throw questions in the YouTube chat if you have them. Okay, so the Jakob Poeltl dilemma is an interesting one because he's finally playing better. And he actually had foul trouble yesterday, and then they just didn't bring him back in towards the end of the ball game necessarily. I think his minutes were depressed in the first half because of fouls, and then he picked up his 4th early in the third quarter. The Spurs are also going to be careful with him because he is on the trade block, and the only thing that could muck this up for them is a season-ending injury. So that sucks. So if you're expecting Poeltl, called him Perkle. If you're expecting Poeltl to play 32 minutes a ball game, it's not going to happen. 24 to 27 is probably where he ends most ball games. And so far this year, that's been fine. He's inside the top 80 on that type of number. But it's probably not changing much leading up to the NBA trade deadline, which is now only 3 weeks from tomorrow. So, we're coming up on it, so it's not that long. So what do you do with him? Well, you continue to start him, certainly in the near term here. You start him because he's been good enough to play, even in 24 to 27 minutes a ball game. And then I think you hope that he does get traded. Now, I don't know what team is hard up for a defensive center. You can kind of look through the 2 standings and look at the top 10, 11 teams in each side and say, okay, well, which of these teams makes sense as a possible landing spot? In the Western Conference, I would argue the Mavericks are kind of the only one, and that's if they want to continue to play Christian Wood and get him more time at the 4, which I think he could handle. But I also think the Mavericks believe that they need to be a bit better on defense. So that's why he could be there. Not that Wood, I know Christian Wood's been putting up really big numbers lately, but remember, Maxi Kleber's been out, Dorian Finney-Smith's been out, and the Mavs have not been that great defense. I know you guys see the blocks for Christian Wood and you want to say that's the defense, but some of that has been recovery type stuff. And yes, admittedly, he's been better on defense. I don't want to take that away from him. But that's the team to me that jumps out among the possible Western Conference buyers at a big man spot. And if he landed there, he'd probably continue to play 25 to 30 minutes a ball game. Then, they're not going to shell out for a guy and then not use him. But like, I don't even know that the Jazz are going to be competing for the playoffs. I don't think the Thunder are ready to be buyers yet. I think they'd rather get one more draft pick, get Chet Holmgren back because he's part of their plans. And Poeltl's on an expiring contract. So if a team brings him on, they have to either be thinking this is a guy we want to re-sign for part of our, go forward plan, or we're willing to get him as a rental and just try to go on a run. I don't really see any other teams in the West that make a lot of sense. Looking out east, who makes sense out east? I don't know who we think is actually trying to go for it. Are the Raptors buyers or sellers? Because going back to Toronto is pretty much the only spot out east that, to me, makes a ton of sense for him. Cavs have plenty of centers. The Nets, I guess, are possible. I know they have Nick Claxton, but they have very little depth in the front court. So maybe that's a spot that you could look. I don't know contractually how any of these things would work. Right now, I'm just looking for a landing spot for him. Celtics, they got plenty of centers. Bucks have Brook Lopez and Portis. They're fine. Sixers have Embiid. If they brought in Poeltl, it would be to replace Paul Reed and Montrezl Harrell. I think that's more than they probably want to spend on that spot. The Heat could probably use a little bit of assistance at a big man spot behind Adebayo, but that's not a great landing spot for Poeltl. Pacers, are you going for it? Well, it depends. Are they trading Miles Turner? Would they try to get Jakob Poeltl back in some sort of 3-team deal? Hawks have plenty of centers. Bulls, they got Vooch. I'm not seeing it. I know that the Spurs have come out and said, we have all these teams like begging for Jakob Poeltl. To me, it's like the Mavs, maybe the Warriors, if they wanted to make a run at it and don't really want to trust Kevon Looney to be that guy because he doesn't block shots anymore. There's like 2 or 3 teams. So I'm not sure that I buy that there's all this stuff going on. That said, I think if he gets traded, it does kind of lock in a 25-minute role for him. Someone's going to trade for him. Even if he's coming off the bench, he's going to play a fair amount. I don't think his role, there are very few places, in my opinion, where a team's going to give up enough assets for him to then play him 18 minutes off the bench. He's going to be a costly guy to trade for at the deadline. So if someone's going to go get him, they're going to end up wanting to play him. So my thought on Poeltl is you probably hang on, because if you're selling on him right now, what are you going to get back? Top 80? I'd rather take a shot that he lands someplace where he gets an extra 2 or 3 minutes a ball game and goes back up into that 50-60 range. So I think this is actually a time, I don't know that I would buy on Jakob Poeltl right now, but if someone is freaking out about the trade deadline and you could get Poeltl for like a 90 range guy, I mean, those 90 range guys are not particularly exciting on the year. You're talking about like PJ Washington, Bojan Bogdanovic. I mean, if I could get Jakob Poeltl for Bojan Bogdanovic, I'd probably do it. KCP's not going to get it done. Not enough name weight there. Jaden McDaniels probably doesn't get it done. Bogdanovic, I think, might, because he averaged 21 points. If Kelly Oubre was still healthy, he probably would have gotten it done. Maybe Aaron Gordon. Marcus Smart is 94. I feel like people think he's been better than he has been this year. A couple things to throw out there. I don't know if I'd give up Wendell Carter Jr., but he's number 102 right now, guys. Remember, he doesn't do anything on the defensive side. Josh Hart, he's been slumping. If he wasn't slumping so hard, he might get it done. So there are some names out there you could use, I think, to get Jakob Poeltl right now, and I would actually lean that direction over the other. Okay, this is the part of the show where we pivot and look at the upcoming slate of ball games, because it was decided that that's something that that everybody really wanted me to do. So let's go through those very quickly here on the show. What am I looking for? I don't look forward to. I don't know. What am I keeping an eye on for tonight? Atlanta in Dallas. Clint Capella's minutes, and kind of is this the end for Okongwu, who, by the way, thanks to his Capella-less run, is inside the top 90 per game on the year. After all those games where he did nothing, just power boosting up the board. This is an interesting one in my estimation, because Atlanta's been playing better, and I don't fully trust the Mavericks. Christian Wood feels like he can kind of push Okongwu around a little bit. I don't know if he's going to be able to push around Capella. I am very curious how some of the key guys do. And then I think Tim Hardaway's been ruled out already, but I haven't seen a report on him in like 2 days. So let's call him questionable for now. If he's out, I don't know that I replace him with anybody. Like, do I really trust Reggie Bullock in a spot like that? Only if you need threes. Atlanta, we talked about Bogdan Bogdanovic being a buy low. I still believe he is. And at some point, he's going to have one of those heater games where he hits like 8 out of 13 shots. Nothing insane, but 4 of them are 3-pointers. So you're talking about probably 20 plus points are coming one of these ball games, and then you're not going to be able to buy low anymore. Wizards at Knicks. Doesn't this feel like a kind of game where it could swing two very different directions? Do the Wizards want to try to go Porzingis at the 5 and deal with Mitchell Robinson there, or would they rather give a little more Daniel Gafford and let Porzingis mostly deal with Julius Randle? From the Wizards side, it feels like that's the way to go. If the Knicks go small, does Washington then, it's hard to say they're going small, but do they go to the non-2 big man lineup? I'd love to see what Daniel Gafford's going to get in this ball game. I also want to know what Delon Wright is going to get in this game, because Bradley Beal is once again questionable. He's going to play in one of these things. They're going to go a little easy on him, but we'll get, I think, a better idea of what that means for some of the guards as he comes back. Indiana, I think we have a pretty good feel for what they are without Tyrese Halliburton. And is this the one where Andrew Nembhard gets going? Sure feels like a distinct possibility, because Oklahoma City, they're picking up wins, but they're largely doing it with big offensive performances. Jalen Williams, I expect him to bounce back in this one. Not much else in this ballgame either. Cleveland, likely be without Donovan Mitchell. I mean, I think at this point, Ricky Rubio, all he's really doing is making it so we can't even consider Karis LeVert in a fill-in spot. Memphis, probably going to spank them without Donovan Mitchell, but nothing really fantasy-wise on the Grizzlies side. Miami might have Kyle Lowry back tonight. He went through shoot-around, and he's questionable for this ballgame. So, chance for Lowry to possibly make his return after he's missed a few ball games. That would render Gabe Vincent unplayable. Not that you guys needed any help on that one. Pelicans. I haven't heard anything about anybody coming back for New Orleans, so let's assume they kind of replicate what the last few have been, which is that Alvarado has been right on the fringe. Trey Murphy's been a start. Najee Marshall is also kind of right on the fringe. McCollum's been taking a ton of shots, and Jonas Valanciunas has been getting a ton as well, because they've needed his offense. Charlotte at Houston. Ooh, this is going to be one of those first team to 135 wins kind of games. Fun, fun, fun. So's the last one on the card, by the way. There's going to be some high-scoring games tonight. Charlotte, I don't think there's much right now. Mason Plumlee tweaked an ankle at the end of their last ball game, but we haven't really heard anything about it, so I assume he's fine. If something does break later in the day that, Plumlee is all of a sudden going to skip a game, which... why wouldn't he at this point? That team is a dumpster fire. I don't know if he's on the trade block. I would think he is. He's an expiring contract. He'd be like a cheaper version of Jakob Poeltl for one of these teams that could probably go get him and use him as a backup big man. Like, there are a lot of teams that could use Mason Plumlee in a way that I don't know as many teams could use Jakob Poeltl, mostly just because of cost. Take a game off, Mason. If that's the case, then Mark Williams, who hadn't played for a few games, would probably be a really interesting fill-in. I guess we'd have to see who the hell would be actually getting a start for the Hornets. But come on, Charlotte, it's time to lean into this thing. You don't need to play Plumlee every ball game. Houston, I think we might have Kevin Porter Jr. back for this one. And, that mostly just hurts everybody else. He's been just inside the top 100 thanks to a difficulty in the 3 roto-friendly categories. But, whatever. I get yelled at for emphasizing percentages and turnovers. They do matter, guys. Like, that's a really good way to win. If you can build a team that's pretty good at one of those. And some team that punt one, you have to be pretty good at the other one, typically. So here's the thing. I'm going to push back on something, because I mentioned it on, I think, yesterday's show. This is going longer than I expected today. That me referring to a guy as a points league option is sort of like a quick way of saying, yeah, okay, like figure out if you're punting certain things and the percentages of turnovers, but also the most hyper competitive leagues these days, as you really sort of like work your way up the ladder, you can't be bad at all 3 of those. It's hard to be bad at 2 of them, but it's possible. But it's almost impossible to be bad at all 3. You kind of have to count on winning one of those 3 categories if you're going to win your playoff week in a head-to-head league. Because it leaves you so little margin for error. And I mean, I guess you can go super crazy volume at that point, but how can you get all of those guys on your fantasy? You need like 6 picks in the first 3 rounds. In any event, what else is going on tonight? Clippers, as we mentioned, probably sitting everybody. We talked about that already. Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, all these kind of guys, they get a little bit of a boost. Utah, we've seen them here without Markkanen. We don't know what his status is. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, it just broke 1 minute ago on the interwebs. Lauri Markkanen is in tonight, everybody. So that probably ruins anything you were getting out of Colin Sexton. It makes Malik Beasley a 50-50 play at best. Who the hell else? Yeah, I mean, it's going to hurt Walker Kessler. It's going to hurt Jared Vanderbilt. It's going to take a little bit away from those guys, but you're not going to stop playing Kessler. He's been incredible. I do think that Vanderbilt now, once again, is in jeopardy of being a drop, but you can see how it goes at least. But he was trending the wrong way before Markkanen went down. Minnesota's in Denver. The Wolves, not a ton of question marks there. I would assume Rudy Gobert is going to sit this one out. If they try to play him through this groin thing again, it feels like a very poor idea. So Naz Reid, slow-mo, as far as I'd go there. Denver, do they sit anyone on a back-to-back? If they do, Bruce Brown gets a bump. And Sacramento and LA, I don't think that there's a whole lot there. I think on the Lakers side, I'm probably benching the big men for now because Thomas Bryant and Wenyen Gabriel seem to be slipping into a timeshare, and you can kind of see how that goes. Sacramento is favored by 4 in this game, which, man, that feels like LeBron might be out. I can't imagine. I mean, that's a Sacramento 7-point edge on a neutral site. He's questionable. We know LeBron's questionable. I thought for sure he'd play in this one and then sit against the Grizzlies. But the way that line is built right now, that, to me, sounds like LeBron is sitting. Because sometimes the line knows a little bit before we do. When did the Lakers and Kings play their last ball game? When was that one? It was some point last week. Is that like Thursday of last week? No, that was the Mavs in LA. That was the wacky game. When was the Kings game? Is that Monday? I really want to find this out. Lakers were in Denver. Oh, God, it was all the way back to the 7th? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, no, Sacramento was favored by 7.5 in that one. So that was, again, that means like a 4.5-point gap on a neutral site. Lakers still, do they have any of their, they didn't really have their guys in that one either. Yeah, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This line, if LeBron was playing, should be more like Kings by 1 to 2 or even a pick 'em. Sacramento by 4 feels like LeBron might be out. If that's the case, if LeBron actually does sit this one out, Dennis Schroeder gets a huge bump. Russ will go insane for better or worse. But Schroeder's the guy that typically moves across the cut line when LeBron is sitting out the ball game. And that's that one. So let's wrap this thing up, everybody. I want to remind everyone once again to please do follow me on Twitter at Dan Bespris. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a Sports Ethos presentation. Back with you again tomorrow, everybody. And to those, again, on the recorded side, please join us for our live YouTube shows every day. It's a lot of fun. You can get your questions answered there as well. Again, that's youtube.com/sportsethos. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, YouTube viewers, let's blitz our way through some of these questions. I do want to share the ranking screen, so let's do that. And I'm going to save my voice, so I'm not going to be yelling here during this the portion of the proceedings here. I will also, by the way, remind everybody here that's hanging out with us on YouTube, this is a great opportunity to click that like button and subscribe button. There's like 6 to 10 of you that subscribe every day, which is super cool. And so we'll keep doing the shows. It adds up. It's not a ton. I'd love to have a day where we just went totally wild with YouTube new subs, get like 50 to 100 new ones. We got that on the trade deadline show last year. And I hope we can do that again this season. That was super cool. But maybe we can do it even on a regular day. Please click that like button. Kisses to all of you that do it. And if you click like and then put your question in that thread, I will get to it. But here, let's get this thing going. Cole. Thoughts on Royce O'Neal's like, no, I'm going to pick. You guys need me to read this thing out loud? You're watching the show with us. Do you think I'll read it out loud. Thoughts on Royce O'Neal's lackluster performance last night? Do you think he'll pick things up for the back-to-back, or should we stream Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Boucher, Malcolm Brogdon, Seth Curry, or Kevon Looney? We just went through the what's coming up today, and I don't think Brooklyn's playing. Yeah, they play tomorrow, so it's not a back-to-back. They go tomorrow. I think Kyrie will be back for that ball game, so I wouldn't play Seth Curry. I don't trust Dante DiVincenzo with the Warriors at full strength. Boucher is a very low ceiling guy when the Raptors are healthy. Brogdon is interesting. Jaylen Brown, I think, went through practice, so he might be back for the Celtics. That's the thing that would throw this whole deal off, because Boston goes tomorrow. Brooklyn also goes tomorrow. If I'm picking between Brogdon and Royce O'Neal, I probably go Royce. That's tough, man, because if Brown sits another ball game, I would prefer Brogdon. Royce O'Neal's my pick if both teams have the lineups in that we expect. Should we be worried about OG Anunoby? Yeah, a little bit. He's taking a step back. He's number 26 overall now after sitting inside the top 20 most of the year. Guys go through slumps. The Raptors are also largely healthy right now, which I think is probably hurting him. The nice thing about Anunoby is he's played in 41 games. He's been one of the healthier Raptors. So to that end, he's number 15 by totals. So it does kind of, in my opinion, buy him a little bit of wiggle room. You're not going to drop him, and you're not going to sell him when he's in a slump. So should I be worried? A little bit, but you're not going to do anything about it. Yep, Markkanen is playing today. Thoughts on this trade? Kuzma and Josh Hart for Bam. Oh, yeah, Bam side. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, Casey, that's right. This is a Montgomery Biscuits hat. I bought this hat about almost 15 years ago now. It is ratty as heck. I don't know if you noticed that the hat I was wearing on yesterday's show was a Visalia Oaks hat, not Rawhide, Oaks. And my kid, I get to start adding new hats to the mix again. My kid's in Little League, and every 2.5 months, they have a new session that starts, and they're the Kannapolis Cannonballers this session. So I got a Cannonballers hat. I didn't know that was a team because they were the Intimidators the whole time I worked in minor league ball. If you can get him for any of those three players you listed, then you absolutely do it. The problem is that I don't know that you can get Paul George for those guys. Maybe Kevin Porter would get it done because he puts up pretty big lines in points leagues. Keegan Murray won't get it done. Poole feels like a long shot there as well. Yeah, you go Paul. I mean, he's going to miss ball games, but his individual game upside is crazy. Traditional 9-cat. Traditional. I do enjoy myself some traditional 9-cat. SGA, Portis, and Dort for DeJounte Murray, Jared Allen, and Josh Hart. Yeah, SGA side. Honest to God, I've forgotten how long he's been out. Once a guy's out like that, I just sort of stop paying attention to it until somebody tells me that they're coming back. Let me dig in here on the Vassell absence. His last ball game was on January 2nd, so he's been out for about 2 weeks. Apparently he's walking on a treadmill. There's been no timeline. The Vassell plan is going to depend a ton on what kind of a league you're in. Roto, you can stash him on your bench. Doesn't really change much. Head-to-head, I think they're probably, I would guess, targeting back after the All-Star break and then playing somewhat carefully in a tank. He's going to be a pain in the butt. Head-to-head, you can probably drop. I know that sounds insane, but I think he's going to be trouble once he comes back anyway. Try to hold if you can, but if you're struggling, if your team is falling, then you need the open roster spot. Someone's going to pick him up. You have to be aware of that, but he might end up being a bigger headache for them. Brunson for Levine. Yeah, no, they're about the same. Jalen Brunson has been getting, I think, more fanfare than Zach LaVine because the Knicks have been playing better. But right now, LaVine is actually in front on a per game basis. Zach is 46. You can see it here on this map. Here's LaVine highlighted, and here's Brunson. Doesn't feel like that, huh? But LaVine's actually been the better fantasy asset so far this year. And it's not turnovers, if you're wondering why we got to that point. LaVine, way more three-pointers. That's a big part of it. And a much better, I don't know, much better, but a little bit better in steals. But otherwise, I mean, they're relatively similar. So splitting hairs a tiny bit. But no, you can go either way on that one. I will tell you, Andrew, why they won't do it, because the NBA wants to have as many games as humanly possible. Turnstile, man. Got to get them in. 14, 15,000 people in an arena for those 12 ball games, buying merch, buying concessions. That's why leagues will never agree to shorten. That's why the NFL is adding games, not subtracting. The one thing I always thought would kind of be interesting would be, like, for minor league baseball, just eliminating Tuesday games because there's 150 people in the stands for those at most ballparks. But that's not the way it is in the bigs. In the NBA, Tuesday games are packed. Unless you're a tanking team, but most of your guys are playing 70 games anyway. It's not going to happen. I wish, like, it makes sense. You can't stretch the league out because the season goes too long anyway. So it's just not going to happen. Teams are going to try to keep incentivizing playing your superstars, or the league is going to try, but it's not going to work. Why should we be excited about Jalen Williams? What gives him stash appeal? Defensive stats? Unfamiliar with it. Yeah, I mean, he's really just sort of like a quiet across the board kind of producer. He can score a little. Percentages are not terrible for a young guy. Rebounds a little bit, assists a little bit, steals a little bit, blocks a little bit. Quiet. He's actually kind of roto-y considering the age more than anything. And we can pull up his numbers here. Whoops, a lot of Williams's. There he is at 156 overall. But you can see it here. Like, the field goal percent's pretty good. Free throws, meh, but not awful. Rebounds can come along. Steals at 1, half a block. There's like a little bit of everything, and he's been better since a bunch of guys have gone down, and he's been able to get more shots and just be sort of more involved. But, like, do I think this guy's going to be a superstar? No, probably not. Especially not on a team that has guys that are in front of him, and more guys may come back and move in front of him. I don't know, man, because Poole's been looking pretty good lately. Howdy. Yeah, he is Paul George is a tough dude to unload. But that's why I think, well, you probably just have to sit on it. But we talked through a few buys on today's show. Poeltl was an interesting one. I talked about Bogdan Bogdanovic yesterday. Let's get through this thing. No. When they're full strength, I don't believe so. With everybody out, then yes. If he plays, actually, then he's a guy we can probably use. I kind of forgot about Herb. Good call, Bill. Forgot. Vaughn, Trey Murphy, Jaden McDaniels, Royce O'Neal, rest of season. Jaden is my top guy there because he's a starter even when the team's at full strength. Royce, he's a starter, but he doesn't get to do much when the team's at full strength. Trey Murphy comes off the bench, but probably does a little more. So I'll go Jaden over Trey over Royce. Rest of season. And frankly, right now, that's probably how I'd rank them too. How am I not freezing? That's a good question. I actually did get a little bit cold a few minutes ago. It's I don't know, it's like 68 in my apartment right now. It's cold outside in LA actually these days. Hold on, I got to block a porn user in the chat room here. I'm a little cold, but it's not too bad. It's 54 outside, but it's well insulated here. Ooh. With Markkanen back, this one becomes a little bit of a tougher call. I'm going to go Kessler still because I want those blocks. No. Let's watch DeLon one more ball game before we make a move. Because if Beal comes back in particular, I do think his minutes probably trend back down. But you guys know I love DeLon Wright. So, like, if he's at 13 minutes at halftime, I probably pick him up. Mason Plumlee sell high targets. I don't know if you're going to get much for him. Plumlee's a tough dude to move. He's 124 on the season. You can see that on the screen here. I don't think you're going to get much. Maybe one of these guys in this range, like Fultz or Oladipo, or maybe you could get Zubats. Bogdan Bogdanovic. Hey, there we go. We Larry Davided this one. All came full circle. Is Dorian Finney-Smith top 100? No, he didn't look very good to me earlier this year. Upcoming back-to-back for Royce. Oh, are you talking like Thursday, Friday back-to-back? Ah, okay, gotcha. Let's go back up to this one. Yeah, I like Royce for that back-to-back. Thinking that through a second time. Damian Lillard, Landry Shamet for that last streaming option. Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Ooh. Okay, so this one's tough because Chris Paul could play and Cam Johnson could play. And that screws it up for both guys. I lean Shamet because I think I like the threes and the assists and the steals more than Damian Lee's scoring and free throws between the two, but it's a little bit category dependent. 3 games next 4 days. Who do you like most? Anthony Lamb, Precious Achiuwa, TJ Warren, or Torrey Craig? We'll go TJ Warren. Yeah, that would probably get you PG-13. Whoo, Jamal Murray for Paul George. Oh God, Paul George is so hard to roster. He's so annoying to roster. Just don't get Paul George. Just don't do it. I know maybe he's healthy for like 5 straight weeks here, and I eat my words there, but he's just so annoying to roster. I don't think Gobert's playing. Tried to play through a groin thing, had to leave again. It feels so dumb if they're going to try to play him through it, but again, I don't know yet. He has not fully been ruled out yet. I am expecting him to take at least 1 game off. We'll see. And Vooch or Sabonis? Ooh, fun one. I like both of these guys. Can I pick both? I mean, they're literally next to each other in the rankings. I knew they were close, but I didn't know that they were 20 and 21. Look at these guys. So Sabonis is if you want more assists. Vooch is if you want more 3-pointers and a better free throw percent. Sabonis has the better field goal percent and higher turnovers. Sabonis is a better 8-cat option if you're punting turnovers. I love them both. I probably go Sabonis because I've found teams are really like field goal percent got more competitive this year. So I think I like that. And I like the 12.5 rebounds instead of 11, but like you're splitting hairs a little bit here. Those guys are great. 2021. It's funny. Yeah, that's how I feel, man. Ha ha, indeed. You just messing with me now. Getting trolled. All right, we've been on for an hour and 5 minutes plus that quiet time at the beginning. I gotta go, man. Thanks for the questions, everybody. You guys are great. Let's see if we can keep snowballing this thing. Hey, anybody that's here at the end that didn't do it, please do click thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube page. I want more. I'll get greedy. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Back at you tomorrow. So long.